All right. Thank you everyone for joining. We're going to go ahead and jump in. So thank you very much for coming today. We are very excited to walk you through this Ask Me Anything webinar. This is part 3 for anyone who joined the first 2 parts. This one is on social media, community management, and content production. So my name is Stephanie Purinton. I am the manager of community management here at Ignite Social Media, and I am joined today by my 2 lovely colleagues of over 6.5 years, Kathleen Loescher, who is the manager of content production at Ignite Social Media, and Meghan Hardy, who is our fearless leader and the director of both the content production and community management departments at Ignite. So we are very excited to answer your questions today. We did receive a few pre-submitted questions. Thank you so much for those who submitted those in advance. But if you'd like to ask us anything on the fly live, please do so by using the question and answer button that you see in your webinar window. So just type in anything you want, and we would love to answer those questions live. Also, we are going to provide a recording today, so no need to jot down a bunch of notes. If you miss anything, you'll be able to listen to it again when we send through the webinar in your email. And with that, we are going to actually ask you a question. So we've got a poll for you, and it should pop up. You'll be able to answer. But our question is, how much content do you think people scroll through on their social media feeds every day? So an individual. Enough to go around the earth? Enough to reach the height of the Statue of Liberty? Enough to cover the distance of a mile, enough to bridge the distance between Ignite's North Carolina and Michigan offices. It's like 700-800 miles, I think. See some questions coming in. Might be less than you think, might be more. Hard to know.
Some days it feels like enough to go around the earth.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of content. All right, looks like almost everybody's voting. Okay, the answer is actually enough to reach the height of the Statue of Liberty. So it looks like people went a little high with enough to cover the distance of a mile. And honestly, in 2020, that may be the case because I know at least I'm personally getting a lot of screen time alerts from Apple saying it's going up week after week. But it's actually enough to reach the height of the Statue of Liberty. And she's a really big lady. So it's just to say that social media is a huge part of people's lives right now and will continue to be so. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Meghan Hardy. She is going to get our minds working with some social media stats.
Great, thanks, Steph. So importance of community management. I think that a lot of people aren't quite sure what that means, how it's so important. There are a lot of stats on this page that you can see just the relevance of social media in general, but also the consumer experience. And that's really where community management and content come into play. 71% of consumers who've had a good experience on social are more likely to recommend a brand. That's huge. Recommendations and shares are like gold for marketers. So just being engaged in your channels and being active with community management and providing good content, all of those are really shaping your audience and their behaviors. Some of the other things I think are really interesting are people visiting brand pages as research for shopping before they're buying things. They're using it for inspiration to find things to buy. I know I have fallen victim to buying some random things off Instagram during this pandemic, something I never did before, but they're getting me. So just really important to think about how overall, this is all driving results for your business. And with that, this year has been especially interesting on the channels, is how I'll put it. Social media marketers have been in crisis mode for pretty much the entire year for a multitude of reasons. Some of them stemming around social justice initiatives that have been happening within the US specifically, but also some globally. Some brands got in on this, some didn't. And a lot of the comment sections were yelling at you for saying something, yelling at you for not saying something, people fighting each other. It's a very volatile place. And then you layer in coronavirus. So that not only impacted different industries, some industries were decimated, some restaurants, bars, but also just some were busier than ever. And some had supply chain issues, or they had to close their stores, temporarily. And so people were trying to get information. There was just a ton that came out with that. And so again, the comment sections were places for questions, for even some people, because that's what people like to do on social media. And then layer on the election. So some brands actually talked about it, some did not. Again, some got called out for talking, some got called out for not talking. People just started fighting about the election under your very innocuous post about something pleasant. So the comments section and your community management were extra important this year because there was just so much happening. And this is all risk to your brand. So having the right people in there really monitoring and engaging properly is so important.
All right, now we're going to get into 5 tips for enhancing your social community. First off is to know your audience. You're really going to want to do this work up front, learn their passion points, learn their pain points, really understand what makes them tick, and then monitor your content that you're putting out on platforms to make sure that you're hitting the mark and resonating with them on these points. Number 2, provide value to your followers, whether it's content, rewards, or something else. You're really just going to want to give them little tidbits of happiness for following you. And definitely keep it simple. You're going to lose your audience over complicated messaging and really asking them to do too much with those pieces of content. You just really want to focus on one thing with each thing you're posting and just build that up over time. Number 3, ask the community. It's a two-way street. Your social channels and everything that you post that has the ability to comment is just an opportunity for fans and even people that don't follow your brand to come ask questions, to leave you compliments, which we like to see, but sometimes to complain. But for this, you want to really flip the tables and ask your audience what they want to see from you and use that really, really, really valuable information to help create future content. Number 4, and Megan touched on this one, it's so important to be responsive. There are so many brands on social media that just post things and kind of, we say, just like throw them out to the universe and hope for the best and leave them out there. But that is such a huge missed opportunity to just really engage with the people that come to your Facebook or to your Facebook page, your Instagram page, any post that you put out there, and help turn fans and even people that may have experienced a problem with your brand or service, take them and you can have these really positive interactions that can convert them into brand advocates. And that's so important. So ensure that your team's available and responsive to community conversations. And yes, that actually includes the negative ones too. Number 5, incentivize advocacy. You're going to want to find ways to reward your advocates for participating in your community. It can be something like surprise and delight opportunities where you could send somebody a personalized package to their doorstep, which will really brighten their day. Or it could be something just as simple as sharing their UGC. A lot of people are going to be super proud to see content that they create relating to your brand on your social channels. And in turn, it really just helps you with your content creation resources as well. And the time that we've all been waiting for, it's time for our Q&A. So like Stephanie said, we have some pre-submitted questions that we're going to go through, and thank you all for submitting those. But at any time in this conversation, if you have a question, like she said, you can just click on that Q&A button in the panel and we'll try to get to it. All right, our first question, and this is a really, really good one to kick off the conversation. Are there any strategies that were considered best practices for social media marketing in 2019 that have gone out the window in 2020?
Yes, many things have gone out the window in 2020, right? Entire content calendars, I think, for a lot of us. One thing that's top of mind for me, at least, that has changed between 2019 and 2020 is actually kind of a content tip. So actually way before 2019, the last few years, we've been telling our clients, best practice, don't use text on your social media images. In fact, Facebook had a rule, I'm sure you've heard of it before, 20% text rule. And that basically meant if your image had more than 20% text, it wouldn't be circulated on Facebook as an ad properly. It would have limited reach, things of that nature. The rule evolved over the years to kind of like have different levels of text. And now it sounds like 2020, it may already have happened, but that text rule is being eliminated, which basically means that now you can have text all over your ads and all over your images. But the best practice is still kind of the same in that while now we might not say you can't use any text in your images, we're going to say you need to use text better. We have a lot of clients who have very complex messaging where text overlays and text make sense for their images, but there is a way to do it right. So I think that that best practice used to be no social media, no text on social media images, and now it's more just less text on social media images.
Yeah, That's a good answer. Also, I would say where 2019 may have been your year of really getting ahead of your content and really having a well-organized content calendar, that completely went out the window in 2020. And I think really a best practice now is to, I mean, certainly you can try to get your content calendar in order, but definitely just like focus on being flexible, being nimble, being able to pivot at any given moment, and also just being really in tune with your community and understanding what the climate is like there, because we've seen several times over the past couple of months that the climate on social media can change overnight. So just keeping an eye on that and being really flexible and adaptive is super important in 2020.
So this one's something that came to mind for me. I will say it's been an issue for a few years probably, but it's been coming up a lot more recently, and that's follower accounts. That's, you know, how many fans you have, how many followers you have, you know, people really trying to get the most followers. And I'm going to tell you right now, stop it. Follower count is a vanity metric. It really is not doing anything for you anymore besides being able to say we have this many followers. But especially like on Facebook, you are lucky if you're reaching 1 to 2% of your fans right now organically. So you spending all that, especially money, if you are buying fans, definitely stop that. That should not be something we're doing anymore. You should get fans naturally through great content. That is the way to build a true community. And also just don't waste your money on these ad buys that are just to get followers, because you're just gonna have to pay to reach them again. So why pay to get them and then pay to reach them? Just put out good content and you're gonna naturally grow your fans. And if you guys need help talking to your C-suite about that one, we're your ladies. All right, next question. Should we respond to every single comment on social media?
Oh, yes, that is a great question. I love getting this question, but of course, some people don't like my answer, which is that I think absolutely yes, you should respond to every single comment. But it's a little bit nuanced, right? We're not going to respond to certain conversations. So at Ignite, we call it the 7 deadly sins of conversations, and I don't have them all memorized. But essentially, if there is a comment or a conversation around sex, alcohol, tobacco, religion, or politics, it's probably best for your brand to avoid it unless they have a real good reason for being in that conversation with the community. So avoiding those topics, avoiding spam. But besides that, if someone has taken the time to leave a comment, to reply to a tweet, I truly believe it makes sense as a brand to respond and engage with those customers. You know, social media is a unique form of advertising because you can have that one-to-one relationship with anybody who comments or responds to your post. So I do think it's important to respond as best you can to every single comment. And it doesn't have to be, you know, a paragraph long response. Sometimes, you know, people are excited just to receive likes from some of our brands or a retweet or something simple like that. At the same time, I do think it is important that if somebody writes you a really heartfelt paragraph about how they've used your brand for 20 years, that you try to match the effort of the customer or the follower and respond back with something kind of equally in kind. So that's something that we tell some of our community managers who are on the pages every day, you know, match the effort of the customer. They took the time to write you a few sentences, respond with a few sentences. They give you a one-word response to a poll question, a like will be just fine. So yes, respond to as many comments as you possibly can, because again, those are your customers trying to talk to you. And in 2020, they expect a response. I don't know what the number is, but people expect brands to be there all the time. So that may not be possible. Responding when you can is. All right, next question. This is kind of a toughie. I'm going to give this one to Meghan Hardy, but it is, what is the best way to build a community in a B2B world?
Very good question. Yeah, B2B is kind of tricky at times. It's, you know, social media is not always set up to support that kind of community. But I will say to just remember first that they are still just the regular people that you're reaching on other channels. So just really think about what you can provide them. Like, what is the value that you're going to bring them? And then really make sure you're hitting that in your content. And if you have any groups, LinkedIn is a really great place to have groups going, especially for B2B. Facilitate conversations there, let people connect. You can even use ambassadors or influencers or super users if you have them to like kind of be moderators in a way in some of these groups. That's a really good way to get people talking in a more organic way. But I would say with B2B, it's just like with regular, don't just hit everyone in the head with a marketing message all the time. Really find out what their issues are and help them solve them. That is the way to really connect in that B2B space. All right, looks like we have some more questions here. What is the right posting cadence? The tricky one.
It's a tricky one, and I'll take a stab at it with an answer that's not quite an answer, but gives you a lot of things to think about. There is no one-size-fits-all answer to this. You really need to take a look at your social media marketing strategy holistically. Take a look at your budget, take a look at your resources, take a look at any paid support that you might have and should have in this space, really. Also take a look at your community, like we mentioned in the 5 tips. Like, you really need to know where your community is and where they're participating to know where and how often you should be posting. It's going to take some testing and learning along the way to find an allocation that really makes sense. And also, just like, don't post for the sake of posting. You're going to want to look at it at quality over quantity. You're going to see a lot more value and get a lot more value out of creating really great quality content that may not be seen everywhere. So just look at it like that. Okay, here's another good one. What are the best management tools and software and editing tools and software?
Okay. That is a great question. I will say I can probably speak to the management tools and software piece at least, which is basically any social media management tool. We are tool agnostic at Ignite Social Media, so we don't say, hey, you have to use this one, it's the best one, because all of them have different features and things that are good and bad about them and serve different purposes for all of our brands. So I will say that, you know, your top 4 or 5 companies, you probably all know the names, Hootsuite, Sprinkler, Sprout Social, Conversocial, all of those are great. And honestly, if you're a social media manager, they're going to make your life a whole lot easier if you are using them. So definitely recommend looking into what makes sense for your brand. Using a tool does make things a lot easier. At the same time, I will say that Facebook specifically, but other brands, other platforms as well, are stepping up the offerings they're giving to businesses and social media page managers. So Facebook, for example, you can use the inbox now to respond on Instagram and Facebook. They also have the Creator Studio, which is basically a repository for content. It makes for easy republishing. It makes for easy scheduling across both platforms. So basically, all that is to say that is you may not need a tool because some of the platforms are providing a lot of good options for page managers just used natively. So it's worth just kind of diving into what your brand might need, but don't forget to check out the native options because they've actually improved a lot over the last few years. And Kathleen, you can probably speak to the content tool piece better than me.
Yeah. So obviously Adobe Creative Suite is a great suite of tools to have if you have a good, robust content team at your disposal. The downfall of that is that it does take a lot of knowledge and talent to operate successfully in the Creative Suite. So there are some other resources that are maybe a little bit more approachable. We use Canva from time to time, and a lot of people find that very valuable for graphic design. And they've even come a long way in building in some photo editing and even now video editing resources in that tool, which can be free. And then you can do the pro version for just a small subscription. As far as copywriting goes, Hemingway Editor is a really great tool that helps you with your messaging and your copywriting by giving you little hints to keep things just as concise as possible. It's super helpful when you don't have a lot of space, especially on Facebook and Instagram, where you get the truncated text where you want to have people to click to see more. We really try to avoid that. So Hemingway Editor is a great tool to help you do that. There's even some really great apps. Some of them are free for your phone where you can do a lot of photo and video editing right there. And we actually have some really good blog posts on our website that can walk you through some of our favorites as far as that goes. All right, this one's a really, really good one. Do you need to have a presence on every single social media network?
I'm going to take that one. No, no, you do not. Either you love that answer or you hate it. But I will say that just like with everything else in social, you need to be strategic. You need to have a reason to be somewhere. You need to make sure that your audience is there. You know, if you have an older demographic as your audience, don't go on TikTok just because everyone's going on TikTok. they may not be there to respond in the way you would want. So I think it's really looking at where your audience is, how they're interacting, even your industry. You know, some industries might not make sense on certain platforms. So I just think really kind of digging in and seeing people are there, if it's worth the time and the investment, because every channel, like once you start a channel, you are now on that channel. So you can't just like start something and then a week later decide that's not something you guys want to do anymore. You know, it is a big investment. So really take the time to research why you're going to be there. Are your people there? What you're going to do there? Do you have the resources to support continually posting or putting, you know, paid media against it? So that's my answer. So no, so everyone doesn't need to be on TikTok. All right. This is interesting. How do you evaluate if your brand should go dark and when you can resume normal content? I think this was used a ton this year, given so many things happening that were there of huge magnitudes. So love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so this is something, Megan, as you said, this happened a lot over the last year. So basically trying to determine whether it makes sense for your ads to be live, whether it makes sense to post organically when there's something happening in the world that feels like a big deal or is taking up a lot of people's social media news feeds. And that is something that we told our content producers and our community managers to watch out for. So as far as when to actually go dark, one of the best ways I have thought about it and have told others to think about it is to basically, everyone knows their target audience. And if you can imagine what your target audience's news feed or timeline looks like, and then picture whatever piece of content you're considering posting or not posting, picture that in the timeline on that day during that event. You know, if say there's a natural disaster and everybody, the top 1, 2, 3 trending topics on Twitter, that's what people are talking about. Does your ad make sense? You know, top and bottom flanked by that type of content. Meanwhile, on Instagram, people might not be posting about that natural disaster. So maybe it makes sense to stay live on Instagram with your content and your messaging. But there's always a right time and place. But if you can basically imagine what your target audience is seeing on their timelines and news feeds and picture if your ad makes sense there, whether it's worthwhile, it's a really good gut check, at least, of whether you should be live or not.
Yeah, I think that is the biggest thing to look at. Like, I just think a lot of times people forget that, you know, their post might be seen in between two really horrible things. I've seen it happen myself where it was like some just really awful, sad post about something horrible that's happening. And then it's like, here's our candy. And it just felt so, there's nothing wrong with their ad, right? They weren't doing anything bad, but it was just in that context, it was not great. Doesn't look great for the brand. I also just think you have to be so careful anyway with what you're saying around things. I know there was an example of a grocery store who had an ad out that said hosting, plan a super spread, and they got killed. And it's like, it's very unfortunate because of course that's terminology they would use all the time. But looking at the context of what's happening in the world right now, sometimes it is better to just back off and wait till it feels a little safer, and then just really making sure what you're saying is not going to be perceived in a wrong way.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, Megan. We have a live question came in that kind of segues into that. So the question is, what are some of the best cause-aligned branded campaigns that you've seen in 2020? And are there any new approaches to cause-aligned campaigns that drive action, like click-throughs and so on and so forth? So I saw this question come in, and I think it makes sense after that last question in terms of when it makes sense for a brand to post and what cause marketing can do for a brand. Really big this year, and I know some of the major players, Nike, Ben & Jerry, Patagonia, REI, you know, a lot of them did a lot of cause marketing this year. And no one campaign is really standing out to me top of mind, but I will say that the thing that makes great cause marketing campaigns stand apart is when the brand is kind of the backseat of the focus. The mistake that a lot of brands make is they make the cause kind of about them and, you know, retweet and we'll save a life, you know, and that's not exactly the focus you want to have. Brands have the ability to do a lot of good in the world. And when they use that power for good, it usually looks really well for the community. So it's just important to take the right tack with it and ensure that if you're doing cause marketing, that it's tied to positive social action, raising money. Kind of an obvious one, but if you can make a charitable contribution along with your marketing, that's a great way to go about it. So those are kind of the big players, at least that I saw in 2020, where I thought, yeah, and I think driving action specifically with raising money for various causes is probably the best, safest way to go for somebody who's getting started in that arena.
Yeah, and I do think with a lot of cause marketing, you know, you see things where it's like, if the audience does this, we'll do this. And I think that can work, but you have to make sure that it's something pretty simple. We'll say that, you know, some challenges have gone viral, but a lot of times asking for something really complex, like go like these 5 things and then come back and like this post and then tag this person. It's just, people aren't going to do it, especially when you're trying to help a charity out. It feels like a little too self-serving. Like Stephanie said, it feels more about the brand than it does the charity. So I would just say to be careful about what you're asking people to do and not asking them to do too much. And I think with all cause marketing, a huge thing that I've seen a lot of this year, we're hot on it for a couple posts and then they've never said anything again. And to me, authenticity is what's going to really drive charity for a brand. Like, it should be part of you now. If that's something you really feel strongly about, you should make that part of what you're posting other times and still trying to drive awareness or get people to donate, whatever it is. Because otherwise it just kind of comes across as you are capitalizing on a moment and you're not really believing that as a brand.
Couldn't agree more. Excellent.
All right. Let's see, what else? We have so many good questions here. What are easy ways to engage your audience on social?
I want that one.
Okay.
Ask them to engage. It may seem obvious, but there's so much you can do in copywriting, asking people an open-ended question so that they'll leave you a comment, asking them to share a photo of an experience that they've had, just prompting them to do something oftentimes will help persuade them to do something. Some platforms, and I really love the examples from Instagram stories, have some cool features built in that help brands and individuals engage with their audiences. There are stickers with multiple choice questions, which are really fun. There's sliders where people can vote on various things or show how strongly they feel about a certain topic that are really cool. There are polls that we find to be really, really engaging. Just a lot of those tools that are built into Instagram stories, we've found with a lot of our brands have been very, very engaging, and it's paid off really well. So just using tactics like that can help you engage with your audience a lot.
Great idea.
Okay. When is the best time to post?
Oh man, I'll take that one. I have a lot of opinions, as always. So this is tough because there was a while where we were always looking at when we posted something, judging performance, when are people active. But unfortunately, because of the algorithms, you could post it Monday at 2 p.m. and someone sees it Wednesday at 10 p.m. So I think that while you can still look at your insights to see when your audience is the most engaged, because it's not going to hurt to put it up when they're more likely to be online. But just think about whatever you're posting, like, is this going to make sense in 3 days or 2 days, or, when someone sees this in the middle of the night? So some of the like Monday motivation or things like that. It's not to say you can't do it, but just do think about that. Just because you're posting it a certain day and time does not mean that's when people are going to see it. So I would just say try, you can post organically based on when they're active, but there really is no like best time to post anymore, just because the algorithms have made it so much harder to reach everybody. All right, what else do we have here? Oh man, I love this one. What is one thing you wish all social media marketers would start doing?
Well, I'll share at least, I guess it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, but it would be great if all social media marketers started sizing their content for each channel and each platform individually. So I think we've probably all seen it. You'll see an Instagram story. This is kind of like the main culprit, where it's pretty clear the picture or the image was designed for either Facebook feed or Instagram feed, and it doesn't look quite right. It's not designed vertically. It's not using any engagement actions, things like that. So That'd probably be my number one thing, that if everybody who does social media for brands really took the time to just design for each individual channel, each individual platform, thought mobile first, things of that nature, customize the copy. I mean, I think we've all probably seen also on Instagram, people will say like, leave a photo in the comments on Instagram. And you can't do that, and that's just stuff that kind of grinds my gears as a, person who's on social media all the time for my job. But that'd be kind of my number one thing.
Yeah, that's a really great answer, Stephanie. And mine kind of builds on that, the quality aspect too. I think people need to start asking the why behind their posts, the why behind what they're posting more. We've seen so many examples, especially over the past year, with lots of sensitive topics and social movements, and people are just posting because everybody's posting. And that might not be the best move for your brand. And it's definitely not the best move for your audience if you can't answer why you're doing it. It needs to be mutually beneficial for both you as the brand and your audience as well.
I love that. And it kind of leads into what came to mind when I heard this question about starting, is to really start to look outside of your own brand and get out of your own silo and your own bubble. A lot of times as brand marketers, we're the biggest cheerleaders for a brand. We think it's the best thing ever created. We truly believe in it. But unfortunately, that's not how everyone else sees it. And I think a lot of times when we're really siloed, we'll think, oh, they're going to love this. This is so cool. But if you ask outside people, they're like, I don't know. It doesn't really make sense to me. So I think getting outside of ourselves is something we all need to start doing. And that especially includes getting a more diverse perspective, talking to different people, all walks of life, anyone who encompasses your audience, like just making sure it's not just the same few people making all the decisions. Really get some feedback from other sources. I think it's just going to help you perform better. It's going to help your campaigns go over better, get more traction, just really kind of getting outside of ourselves and really looking at what other people want from us instead of just what we have to offer. That's it.
Awesome. Great answer, Megan. All right. I think we are technically over time. So I really appreciate everybody sending in their questions. And thank you so much for joining us today. We had a wonderful time answering all your questions. Thank you for the live questions and the pre-submitted questions. And as a reminder, there is a recording that will be coming out to you in your email, so keep an eye on that. And also, we do ask that you go to our website and check out our newsletter. You can subscribe there to our newsletter, Social You Should Know. It is full of awesome information about the social media landscape, and also will let you know about upcoming webinars and events, all the goings on that we have here at Ignite. And so we'd love for you to stay in touch. Thank you so much for joining, and we hope you had a good time, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.